It's been 7 long years that I have been trying to grow watermelons unsuccessfully, but I finally figured it out. And make sure to stay to the end because I'm going to tell you my #1 tip as to why I was successful this time. When you plant watermelons, you want to start by planting them direct seeded, or if you're going to use them in trays, make sure to transplant them very early on because once they get big, they don't do well with transplanting. I started mine in, I think it was like late March, early April. Now I'm here in Florida, so your timing might be different. What you really want to aim for is when you are done with your frost, but before it really starts to heat up. When these guys are young, they're a little bit sensitive to like the super high heat, but once they, get older, they are absolutely fine with steaming hot temperatures, even down here in Florida. Another reason why I like to grow them in March or April is because that is our drought season. Watermelons do imply that they like water, but I think what I have figured out through this process is maybe not while they're babies, when they don't have fruit on them. They seem to do better and hold off the blight longer when I start them in our drought season and then we proceed into our rainy season. So if you imagine, you're going to start them a little less water, and then as you go along, you're increasing the water more and more. Another thing to think about when you're growing watermelons is you want them to be in full sun. These guys can handle it. And I've had them in full sun right here. They are getting a solid, I think like 9 to 12 hours here in Florida, which is insane because our heat intensity here is pretty crazy. But they really like it. I think it helps ripen the watermelons. It really helps keep the disease off the leaves because it keeps the leaves nice and dry. The other thing to think about is space. I only have 3 watermelon plants, only 3, and it's taking up 4 full beds. And these are 8 by 4 foot beds. So this is a lot of square footage for 3 watermelons. In the past, I've tried to go 3 in 1 bed and then just kind of stack the vines on top of each other. Yeah, that leads to disease very, very quickly. And that took out many of my plants in the past. So make sure to give them a lot of space so that they can breathe and they can get rid of any disease or fungal issues when they get wet. The next thing to think about is how to fertilize these guys. Now, I just put garden tone down in the transplanting hole or in the area of where you're direct seeding. That worked perfectly for me. I think when I got about halfway through the season in June, I gave them some fish fertilizer just to kind of boost the flower production so I could try to get as many melons as possible. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to water them more as they go on. So once they have fruit on them, you're going to want to start increasing the water more and more. These guys take a lot of water. This has been the rainiest season, and I really expected, since it had so much rain for us, that I would have a significant amount of disease, and that didn't happen. So I'm really reconsidering how rain impacts disease versus how my watering system impacts disease. So maybe something about the well water contains more of, the pathogens and the fungal rather than rain. I don't know. That's something I have to think more about. But I will say this, we have had rain every single day. And I'm not talking about regular Florida rain where it sprinkles for a second and then dries off. I mean deluges of rain, like huge amounts of rain. We just had a storm pass not too long ago that dumped something like 12 inches. It was insane. And these plants have done fairly well. Now they do have some disease on them, but I have noticed that it's made for sweeter watermelons. It's made for larger watermelons. I have picked so far 3, and each one of them right around 30 to 35 pounds a watermelon. It's insane. So definitely the watering has helped. If you only have overhead watering and you're not a place that gets a significant amount of rainfall like I do, I would strongly encourage you to water just the area where the vines started. So these vines are kind of reaching all over the place. They're re-rooting. I've noticed that. Pretty cool, kind of like winter squash. But in the main point where they started, if you focus your watering there, you're going to do a lot better and let the rainfall do the rest of the beds wherever they're sprawling. Because I've had issues with disease in the past, I have gone through just about every week and I have sprayed the foliage with my hydrogen peroxide mix. So I use 10 tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide to 1 gallon water. Make sure to put it in a dark colored container, or you won't be able to save it for the next, cycle of sprays. If you're just going to use it that one time, it can be a clear bottle. It's not a big deal. You just have to get it sprayed on within 10 minutes because the light and the air and things like that do cause the hydrogen peroxide to deteriorate, and then it basically turns into water, which is not helpful. So either cover the bottle, paint the bottle, or just use it once and done and refill it every single week. Now, once you have flowers forming, you have to consider pollination. I am really thankful. I put in a lot of flowers, a lot of native plants, and so I've really attracted a lot of the pollinators here. So I didn't have to hand pollinate any of my melons this year. But typically in the past, when I didn't have as much activity, I did have to hand pollinate. The way that you hand pollinate is you find a male flower. Male flower is just a flower with a stem, typical flower. The female flower looks a little bit different. It has the flower at the top, just like the male flower does, but underneath the flower head, where the stem would be, you see this like tiny bulge. And basically what it is the tiniest, babiest little watermelon sitting underneath the flower. That's how you know the difference between the female and the male flowers. The female has an immature piece of fruit underneath the flower head. And all you have to do is take a paintbrush, Q-tip, and wipe the male flower, the inside of the male flower, and then walk over to the female flower and wipe again. If you don't have those items, what you could do is you could pick the male flower off, peel off the leaves to where you just have the center, and dot the center of the female flower with the center of the male flower. So through the years of my trial and error of watermelons, I have learned all about how to handle the disease, which we talked about, how to get the pollination to take, how to fertilize it so that they grow nice and big, how to water it so that they grow nice and big without getting disease. Then it comes time to harvest. This one, for some reason, I could not wrap my brain around this for probably, I think this is the third year. I would pick them too early every single time, and you would end up with some pink in the center, mostly white on the edges. Not the sweetest, not the best watermelon. I figured it out this year, and I'm so stoked about that. So they all have these tendrils that grow at the edge of the stem. So you have the stem, it attaches to the vine, and then there's a tendril where the plant climbs or grabs things. You're looking for that closest tendril. That tendril will dry, and it has to be dry from the tip of the tendril all the way to the base of the stem on the vine. So completely brown, crispy, dry. This is my trick. When it hits that point, go on your phone, set an alarm for 5 to 7 days. In 5 to 7 days, your alarm goes off and tells you it's time to pick your watermelon. That has shown perfection for me. So you don't have to go through all of my failures. It is not immediately after the tendril is dry. I have noticed that is not right then. It is a few days after that tendril has completely dried. So 5 to 7 days after the tendril dried, that's really it. Now, other people have had good success with knocking on the watermelon. I never knew what it was supposed to sound like, so that never helped me. Now that I know what one sounds like fully ripened, now it's helpful, but back then it didn't make sense to me because I didn't know what it would sound like. The other thing is the yellow spot on the bottom. Many of mine had yellow spots in the past, and yeah, they weren't ripe. That is a really big tip, but there's one tip that's even bigger, and this has made a world of difference in my garden, and that is variety. Last year, I wanted to test out a bunch of varieties. I tested out 9 different varieties. I did Crimson Sweet, Chow Chew, I did Sugar Baby watermelons. I did them all. None of them did as well as this guy right here, and I love this one. It doesn't look traditionally like a regular watermelon, but it's really, really good. So this is the Moon and Stars, and it's called that because instead of having stripes on the watermelon, it has stars, little dots all over the watermelon, and then it has usually a little moon shape. It could be like a crescent, it could be like a full moon. It's really cute, but it doesn't have the traditional stripes. Now, flavor-wise, these are better than any watermelon I've ever gotten in the store. And I know we all say that as gardeners, but this one takes this one takes the cake. It is so good. It's super sweet. Even when I picked them a little underripe, they were still very, very sweet, very juicy. The seeds aren't bad. They are an heirloom variety, so they do have the black seeds, but they're not like super crazy amounts. Like I think the Crimson Sweet and the Sugar Baby have a significant amount of seeds. But this one's not too bad. You can cut around them and it's really easy. There's a lot of flesh parts of the watermelon. As well as it has this like floral scent to it. When you cut it open, it smells like flowers. It's really cool. And I know like all watermelons kind of smell sweet, but this one smells like you're in a flower store. It's really, really nice. And so number one tip, make sure that you're checking out different varieties. So the Moon and Star works in my area, but there might be other varieties that work better in your area. So maybe take a season to like test out a bunch of varieties and see which works the best. I hope you had fun hanging out with me today talking all about watermelons. Happy gardening, guys.